Let's go, y'all. Double tap that screen, smash that like button. Let's get the likes up. We went crazy last night. 126,000 people came through the chat. Over 300 likes. What could I say, man? We are fast approaching 2,000 subscribers. We're on our way to, we stopped at 10 on the last channel. So once we get to 10, we'll start counting again. But let's get down to it, y'all. Double tap that screen and let's get to the real shit.
A Science and Kirk success story. Meet Pat. Dancing is her thing, and helping kids through her youth.
Is a D.C. federal judge, Judge Sullivan, on the verge of ordering the production of millions of unseen Epstein documents, including those closely tied to Donald Trump? Is that what we're watching with Judge Sullivan? I just did an interview with Katie Fang's lawyer, LinkBelow, and my takeaway from that reporting and a review of her original complaint is that we can't lose the forest for the trees. This isn't a case just about what she's seeking in her preliminary injunction motion, that she's won an unbreakable winning streak against the Department of Justice.
I told y'all, once you get a preliminary injunction, you pretty much won.
5 categories of documents. Oh no, it's not just about those categories. It's not just about the untranslated foreign language documents in this international child sex trafficking ring. It's not just about the documents about a sex torture video. It's not just about the documents about the 4 times that the FBI interviewed a victim who claims that she was assaulted by Donald Trump when she was 13 years old. It's not just about that. It's about the millions of documents to complete the production, and the fact that this federal judge, Judge Sullivan, who's already throwing around the words like contempt.
Y'all know what MAGA gonna say? Where's your proof? Where's your proof?
Against the prosecutors who appeared before him in his courtroom. If he, now having seen that the Department of Justice has absolutely no defense, has sent in an ill-prepared advocate who spent, according to reports, and LinkBelow, the lawyer for Katie Fang, spent a considerable amount of time in court closely examining his shoelaces and not responding to the federal judge. Will this lead the federal judge to ultimately grant summary judgment in favor of Katie Fang, force the production not just of those 3 or 4 categories of documents at stake in the preliminary injunction, but the millions of documents that have not yet been produced, and more to the point, take away from the Department of Justice their self-policing of the production. They're doing it themselves. They're DIY. And turn it over to a court-appointed officer, an officer of the court, a special master, a former federal judge, to do the review and make sure all documents, as required by law, as required by the statute passed by Congress, are produced. I'm going to cover that, including my interview with LinkBelow, here on Legal AF and the Midas Touch Network. I'm Michael Popok. Take a minute, hit the free subscribe button over on Legal AF YouTube channel. We spent, understandably, a considerable amount of time talking about Katie Fang's big win as an intrepid journalist, trying to do her job and to support, in which in the preliminary injunction, she's seeking 5 immediate categories of documents to be produced. The foreign language documents to be translated, the handwritten FBI 302 interview notes of that victim about when she was 13 years old in her interaction with Donald Trump, including her being, according to her words, sexually abused by him. The documents related to the sex torture video, and where is the redaction log of the more than 200,000 documents that haven't been produced at all. That was the focus, the narrow focus of the preliminary injunction, in a master stroke by her lawyers and by Katie. But the bigger picture is found, of course, in the complaint. And I'm going to give you now some insider knowledge from Katie's lawyer, who was in the room during the most recent hearing with Judge Sullivan. Let's remember, we'll post this up on Legal AF Substack, what they are seeking. In the counts, they are seeking a declaration that there's been a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act and that there's been harm as a result. In their prayer for relief on page 14, they want the following in the underlying lawsuit. They want a declaration that the defendant, Todd Blanche, has failed to comply with the act, the law, stop the ongoing violations of the act, direct the defendant to remove all unlawful redactions, rip off the black tape, reproduce all materials that were produced but then unlawfully retracted. So there's documents that were out there for a moment in the public domain and then withdrawn. Produce all the materials that have not yet been produced. Those are the millions of documents, including those related to Donald Trump, and award them attorney's fees. Now here's paragraph 4. The act required the Attorney General to produce, with limited and precisely enumerated exceptions, all documents held by the Department of Justice or the Federal Bureau of Investigation concerning Epstein, Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, and other individuals named in connection with his activities. Paragraph 6, that required production never occurred. We know that. Paragraph 28, talking about inappropriate redactions. Many of the redactions that defendant made facially conflicted with the requirements of the law. The department redacted A, the identities in a draft indictment of people who allegedly conspired with Epstein to persuade, induce, and entice individuals who had not attained the age of 18 to engage in prostitution. B, the identity of the person who wrote to Epstein in 2014, "Thank you for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty." C, the identity of the person who wrote to Epstein in 2017, "That I met blank today. She is like Lolita from Nabokov, femme miniature. So now I should send you her type of candidates only." D, the identity of the person who wrote to Epstein in 2018 that, quote, "I found at least 3 very good young poor, but we was so tired, and that meet this one, not the beauty queen that we both likes her a lot." The identity of the person who wrote to Epstein in 2013 that, quote, "New Brazilian just arrived, sexy and cute, 19 years old." The identity of the person to whom Epstein wrote in 2009 that, "Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video." The identity of the people who wrote those emails in exchange with...
It's not going away, Donald. It's not going away.
Epstein are likely should be investigated by the Department of Justice and the FBI as having participated in a criminal enterprise related to sex abuse and child sex abuse. Let's go to paragraph 31, withheld and retracted documents. Paragraph 33, for instance, in one document, a woman accused Trump of forcing her to perform oral sex when she was a minor. The FBI found this accusation sufficiently credible that it interviewed the alleged victim 4 times. Now let me show you a clip of my interview with Brendan Ballou. First, here's his observation about how poorly the Department of Justice did in the courtroom, and then I'll explain why that will grease the skids for a future order of the court in favor of Katie Fang. Play the clip.
It was a pretty crazy 2 hours, so just to set the baseline here, the department, we want a preliminary injunction requiring DOJ to produce a whole bunch of information or show cause why they couldn't. DOJ has just repeatedly failed to comply with the court's order here and has failed to comply with follow-on orders. And so this was really a chance for the judge to bring the parties in and understand, okay, why, Department of Justice, are you not following these orders, and what am I, Judge Sullivan, going to do about it? And to your point, I want to be diplomatic here, I want to be respectful, but they were making the arguments that they weren't making, in that, they really didn't seem to have a plan for the hearing or for what the judge's arguments were going to be, or questions were going to be. Sort of basic questions about the case, what their responses were. There were just long periods of silence in the courtroom as the Department of Justice, I think, struggled to articulate why it couldn't follow the law here. So I had never really been in a hearing like that, where one side...
Hey, Infinite, I played that other video. I'm going to get back to that joint. So you can explain to us a little bit more what's going. I mean, you can see what's going on. They're rocking the vote over that motherfucker. Well, we definitely going back to that video.
Aide was just silent on their own arguments, just saying that they were going to do things and wouldn't explain why. And I think that made the follow-on conversation, which was Judge Sullivan's essentially half-hour-long description of having previously found the Department of Justice in contempt, more than a decade ago, I think really chilling, because I think he really made clear the profound professional consequences that follow you if you are in fact held in contempt. I am certain that Judge Sullivan does not want that to happen, but I am hopeful that his message resonated with the government lawyers.
What you described, I used to call in the business close shoelace examination. Here's something most people aren't told about their credit score. It's not just like whether you pay your credit cards, it's best when to do. You can apartment reads, smart credit estimates. To reinforce my argument is the fact that the Judge Sullivan, so ignored the Department of Justice and effectively took the position that they can't be trusted, that they only had Katie Fang's side, Brendan Ballou and Public Integrity Project, write his proposed order and other submissions without having to share it with the Department of Justice. Here's my discussion with Brendan on that.
What's been so shocking about this particular case is that the Department of Justice very clearly wants to win, but is very unwilling to make any arguments to win. That was what was happening at the hearing today. It's also been what's happening across the entire case. When we move for the preliminary injunction, and I should really call out my colleague Sam Ward-Packard, who really came up with the whole PI strategy, Emily Gilman, who argued the case in front of Judge Sullivan last week. The Department of Justice's response, at no point did they argue that they were complying with the law, which I thought was pretty shocking. You would think you would want to at least nominally say, look, Judge, we are actually following the law here. They didn't even try to do that. By and large, the same thing happened in this hearing. There really was not a sustained effort to argue that the Department of Justice was complying with the court's orders. Instead, there were sort of variations, and I don't think that they wanted to say this particularly explicitly, but there were variations on the theme of, we don't believe that we need to follow these orders, or we have reinterpreted them so that we don't need to follow them. Again, it's something that I've really never seen the Department of Justice personally upfront do before.
And so you can't lose sight of the forest from the trees. All these wins for Katie Fang, this axe chopping of the tree, cut, 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 cut. That's going to lead to a mighty redwood falling, don't you think? And that mighty redwood is when they move for summary judgment without necessity of a hearing or a trial, to have the court declare that the documents have not been produced. It's in violation of the law and they need to be immediately produced. And the appointment of that special master. That's really what this is all about. And at the rate that they are going and failing in front of Judge Sullivan, the special master is moving ever closer to being appointed. Here's my discussion with Brendan on that.
This is actually just about a small set of the overall documents that are at issue here. So I agree. I think Judge Sullivan is teeing up some sort of ultimate order on this sort of initial set. But ultimately, we're talking about millions of documents that need to be properly reviewed that we really can't trust the Department of Justice did a good job on, or a complete job, or an honest job on. And so I think what we need to be doing is getting to the substance of this case, get to what's called summary judgment, as you know, so that we can try to get the ultimate relief, which would be the appointment of something like a special master to oversee the Department of Justice work here, make sure that they're actually compliant. But I will say, every time the Department of Justice evades, fails to comply, fails to be completely transparent, it's going to make it a lot easier for us to get that ultimate remedy.
So keep our eye on the prize. The preliminary injunction about the 5 categories is important, but every time they prove their point in court, Katie Fang and Public Integrity Project are one step closer to getting the federal judge to order the production of millions of pages of documents and have it and take the Department of Justice out of the equation and turn that project over to a ex-federal judge or ex-federal magistrate to handle the oversight of that process. I'm glad you're here on Legal AF and the Midas Touch Network. Help us continue to grow our pro-democracy channel, our independent journalism and commentary over on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit that free subscribe button there. Until my next report, this is Michael Popak. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.
Here's to those who know trip planning can start with a map or with what's for dinner, and who know the true way to experience a new place is to taste it.
Hi there, everyone. It's 4 o'clock in the East. If we were covering or dealing with any other president in our country's history, that president's reliance on a 35-year-old aide described by journalists who cover the White House as a, quote, human binky, an aide who wrote letters of her devotion to the president so concerning that even the United States Secret Service was alarmed by her seeming obsession, the whole country would be asking, how does she still have access to the president of the United States and the White House? And is there any sort of risk involved in having her there? But because we could not be covering a White House any further from anything resembling normal, what we're dealing with instead is Donald Trump's closest allies losing their collective minds over any mention of or coverage of the well-documented closeness of his relationship with this aide. Her name is Natalie Harp. It appears she is never not by his side. Privately, reporting reveals that Harp's unwavering loyalty is making some people within Trump's White House and inner circle concerned. From that Times reporting, quote, Ms. Harp's displays of devotion have unnerved some of her colleagues. Several videos shared with the New York Times show Ms. Harp sprinting across great distances to keep up with Mr. Trump's golf cart as it putters across his course in Scotland. And in a letter to Donald Trump that was after the trip that was viewed by the New York Times, she writes, quote, I also am sorry if I was an embarrassment walking the course in Scotland. The letter goes on to say, quote, I want things to always be right between us. I also know I've been distracted all week, forgetting to eat throughout the days and even forgetting to sleep and only catching a couple hours at a time, end quote. The letter concludes with all my heart, Natalie. And adding to our quickly expanding understanding of the relationship between the president and this aide and the lengths that this aide, Natalie Harp, will go to remain by Trump's side at all times, CNN is out with some new reporting today about Harp's insistence that she accompany Donald Trump in his motorcade to his 2023 criminal trial in New York. They write this, quote, there wasn't room for Harp, the hyper-loyal aide whose devotion to Trump had quickly entrenched her within his orbit. A screaming match in the lobby ensued, with Harp insisting that Trump had personally asked her to attend the court appearance. Two sources familiar with the matter tell CNN. Denied a seat but determined not to be left behind, Harp jumped into an SUV trunk, according to the two sources, and confirmed by a photo obtained by CNN. For some, that kind of behavior might raise alarm bells. Harp's own brother reacted to that incident by calling it a, quote, unhealthy obsession. And speaking to CNN last night, here's how he explains why he thinks his sister has become close to Donald Trump.
My mom raised us with the idea that American exceptionalism was the correct way of looking at things, that the United States is the boss of the world, that, like, you know, slavery was back then, that was normal. People weren't bad because they had slaves. And honestly, and it's like Trump wants to take all those books out of schools. He wants to rewrite history. And so, like, I think that my sister, unfortunately, didn't break out of that delusion that my mom raised us with. And Trump is like everything that my mom taught us to respect. Trump's best friends are people who are his fan club, you know? Like, and so she's his biggest fan. And so that's probably why he likes her. He thinks that he saved her life. So, like, somebody living with that kind of gratitude, that must feel pretty good.
A growing spotlight on Donald Trump's closeness to an aide so devoted to him she had the Secret Service concerned is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. Former Deputy White House Press Secretary during Donald Trump's first term as president, now spokesperson for Home of the Brave. Sarah Matthews is here. Also joining us, senior White House reporter Vaughn Hilliard. Vaughn, I think I first knew of this aide from a Mark Caputo piece of reporting that Tim Miller reminded me of today. I didn't know her name, but I knew that there was suddenly an aide printing out positive coverage. And I don't know if the piece described her as a human printer or if that was sort of the analysis afterward of filling his mind with the idea that everyone liked everything he was doing as a difference maybe between the first term when he really sat around consuming a lot of broadcast cable news. And then it was Regime Change, the book written by Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, that I think introduced me to this individual. And I'm struck by something Maggie Haberman said this week, that the Secret Service was concerned about what seemed like an obsession. What is your understanding of how close she is to Donald Trump right now and whether the Secret Service has those concerns right now?
Nicole, the reporting is absolutely right. And I actually became familiar with her 2022, more 2023 as well, right around the time that initial report about the way in which she would print off papers for Donald Trump while he was out golfing or wherever he was first reported. Because at the time, there was somebody, an aide to Donald Trump, that was around him at Mar-a-Lago that had talked to federal agents and was effectively not cooperating, but was at least talking to them. And we were trying to pinpoint at the time who it could be. And I had mentioned the name Natalie Harp, and this one individual told me, no, it is not Natalie Harp. And then that is where we became more familiar with the role that she played in what was a very small insulated circle in that time period of 2022, 2023, around Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago after he had left Washington, D.C. And she was somebody that he had grown fond of and somebody that he grew to trust in a world in which he had great mistrust of most people. And that is where I was told by one person just a couple weeks ago that they know that if they want to get something in front of Donald Trump without messaging or calling him directly, but to catch his attention, that you send it directly to Natalie. It could be just simply an article, and that she will bring it up and the headline could catch his attention. That is the most effective way to get in front of the President of the United States is by going directly to Natalie Harp. And so I think that this is an extension of the potential concerns about what that type of relationship looks like. On one hand, he has a trusted aide. On another hand, there is much of what we do not know. She does not have an extensive background. And one other point I'd make, Nicole, is the fact that I got a message about a month ago, July 22nd, the day of the dignified transfer of 4 American soldiers returning to Dover Air Base. And the President of the United States, Secretary Hegseth, they were on the tarmac. But I was messaged after the fact by somebody saying, look at this photo. Natalie Harp is on the tarmac, that it is outside of the protocol of any other administration, let alone for a dignified transfer of American soldiers who died in war. And there were deep questions and skepticisms of this relationship and how somebody who is serving in this capacity of the president could be in a position to be somebody welcoming the return of American soldiers.
Well, I mean, I've worked in a White House. There's one answer, because the White House chief of staff either is fine with it or is too weak to tell Trump or this aide, Natalie Harp, that it's inappropriate or beyond protocol. I mean, I'm confounded by the reaction. This is obviously something that they're all comfortable with until John Ossoff mentions her name in a Democratic rally. Why are they so triggered if this is a relationship they're proud enough about to showcase her at a dignified transfer, Vaughn?
Well, for number one, if there is one individual that is most effective at getting information in front of Donald Trump, and if that person is Natalie Harp, it would work to your benefit to post on social media about Natalie Harp and come to her defense, even if the mere mention of the word name Natalie and traveling with the president is a fact and doesn't go beyond that, right? Stephen Chung, the communications director, he came out and attacked our friend and a colleague to us here at the White House, Kristen Holmes, for asking the president about Natalie Harp. And yet, I think that it is very much understood that the President of the United States is receiving direct information, and undoubtedly you would, one, presume that some of that information could include the defenses of her and the type of working relationship they have here at the White House.
I think I understand what you're saying. Sarah Matthews, you are one of...
Just download Dave. You can qualify for up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. Dave helps you when you're...
What was actually a pretty large group of young, smart women who went to work for Donald Trump in the first term. I've never heard him defend you or Cassidy Hutchinson or any of the other women from that first term. What do you understand about his relationship with Natalie Harp?
I actually knew Natalie Harp during my time when I was working for the administration. And before I joined the first administration, I worked on Trump's 2020 reelect campaign for a year. And Natalie Harp was a campaign surrogate for us because she was a benefactor of Right to Try. And I remember her messaging me all the time, asking how she could be more helpful. And it was very obvious to me at that time that she wanted to be in the MAGA world and be in Trump's orbit. And obviously, over time, she has now risen the ranks to be one of his closest aides. She is someone who has the ear of the president. And she serves as an executive assistant for him, but also she is one of the gatekeepers of information for him and controls his social media. So that is something that he only entrusts with very few people. So it shows the level of trust that he has in her to me. But we also have to highlight that because she has access to his social media, she is the one that's feeding him some of these nasty things that he has posted. For example, I think of that racist video that he posted of the Obamas depicting them as monkeys. That was reported to have come from Natalie Harp. So she's feeding him AI slop in addition to lavishing him with praise and feeding him positive tweets and news articles to boost his ego. And I think that's why he keeps her so close, is because she is this a sycophant who is so obsessed with him that it alarms Secret Service, but he likes the way that she makes him feel. And so it was interesting to me to see Republicans jump to the conclusion that Senator Ossoff was insinuating an inappropriate or sexual relationship between the two. When I look at the relationship between the two, and I just think there's something weird going on in the sense of her extreme devotion, borderline obsession with the president. And I think that a lot of aides who are working in Trump 2.0 feel the same. And how do I know that? Because yes, publicly they're defending her. But in that New York Times article that Maggie Haberman put out today, it said that Natalie Harp is described as a loner within the White House. And so I do think that there are a lot of people who actually look at her obsession with him and think that it's a little odd. And that's saying something for an administration full of sycophants.
Well, I mean, what's interesting to me is that these stories can only be known on the inside, right? Like the letters have been shared with journalists and the Secret Service concern has come out because someone shares the concern. And I just want to read some of the things that have come out about the relationship. This is from the New York Times. As long as Ms. Harp is around, Trump enjoys an unvetted flow of information, some of it poisonous and counterproductive, at least as far as a number of his other advisors are concerned. She supplies him with content she fishes out of the social media gutter, like the video he posted depicting the Obamas as apes, and provides him with a view from the world outside official Washington, of which he has always been mistrustful. Her moniker is the human printer because she tails the president with a portable printer so she can hand him information in hard copy. She's a platinum blonde geyser of positivity, there to buck him up when the going gets rough. She believes, or at least vehemently claims to believe, that he totally won the 2020 election. Ding, 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 ding. I mean, it feels like she is both toxic in terms of her lack of attachment to truth. I mean, you can see why John Kelly doesn't have a role in this White House and why someone like this does. But I wonder why someone like Susie Wiles is so comfortable with someone who is getting Trump to do things that are not in his political interest. I mean, he's plunging in the polls, not because he doesn't believe his 2020 lies, but because he doesn't believe the reality of people's economic despair. Sarah?
Yeah, I think Susie Wiles picks and chooses her battles with Trump, and she looks at someone like Natalie Harp and thinks that it's a lost cause for her. That Natalie Harp has ingratiated herself so much in Trump's orbit and in his world that it's not worth it for Susie Wiles to try to push back. We know that she previously did in the past, or I assume it was Susie Wiles or other top senior campaign officials during the 2024 campaign, because it was reported that during that summer before the November election, Trump stayed at Bedminster, and while he was staying at Bedminster, the campaign staff wanted to create distance between Harp and the president because they were worried about how close the two had become. And so they refused to give Harp a bedroom at Bedminster. And what did Harp do? She came up with a workaround. She decided to stay in the women's locker room all summer long at Bedminster, despite being given not being given a room. So that shows me that senior level officials, possibly Susie Wiles, did try to create a rift between the two and some distance, but they were unsuccessful because it appears that Harp's devotion to Trump is unwavering.
Vaughn, I want to share a little bit more of the reporting. Again, this is stuff that wouldn't be known unless people on the inside shared it on the outside. This is more reporting from regime change. Harp's devotion to the president remained undimmed through the hectic early months of the second term. Trump had taken to telling his staff that Natalie was the only one who loved him as much as his wife and kids. Quote, "All of you will go off and make money. She'll never leave me." There's some more reporting that Harp wrote.
We hired a big media agency last year to handle all of our meta ads. I spent well over 6 figures on their fee, and it didn't work out. And obviously, my first instinct was Upwork to find us a freelancer before, because I have been working with Upwork for literally 6 years. If you're not familiar, Upwork is a platform where you can hire freelancers all over the world for a range of different things, from marketing to operations to creative work, all without committing to a full-time hire. There are over 125 categories, 10,000 advanced skill sets. So you're not just hiring a marketer, you're hiring someone who does exactly what you need. And then what I really like is being able to see real work history, reviews, and past results before making your hire. I literally just found a media buyer about 2 months ago. He's been working with us and it has been seamless. And for me, it was a reminder, even 6 years into running this business, that scaling is not always about spending more money or doing something that feels flashy and big. It's just about making the right hires. And you can do that with Upwork.
Trump an adoring letter that she left in his personal spaces, including one that reads, quote, "You were all that matters to me." Haberman and Swan report that Susie Wiles told others she remembered thinking when she saw it, "Where am I?" Where are we all if this